Good afternoon, everyone. And on behalf of Professor Lorraine Leeson, the Associate Dean of Research, and myself, Librarian and College Archivist, Helen Shenton, a very, very warm welcome to this webinar on Plan S and the implementation actually of Plan S. How we're going to run this is that my colleagues Niamh Brennan and Edie Davis are going to give a presentation about Plan S, and also much more about what we can do and how we can help with the implementation of it, because it came in on as mandatory on the 1st of January this year. And then they'll talk for about 20 minutes. And then we've got a question and answers. I know that already there's a lot of questions. And my colleague Arlene Healy will moderate those questions to Lorraine and Edie and Niamh and myself. Would you put any questions in the chat function so that Arlene can moderate it? This is being recorded, and will be a version will then also be on the library webpage, as will other future events. But this is the first one about bringing in the realities, if you like, of Plan S. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over, please, now to Niamh Brennan, Program Manager in Informatics, and then also Edie Davis, who's the Content Manager within Research Informatics, and they will tell us and inform us about the implementation of Plan S. Thank you. Over to Niamh.
Thank you very much, Helen, for that introduction. I'm just going to share my screen with you for the moment. I hope that you can see it now. Just go into the full screen. Hopefully that is showing now at this point. Good stuff. So thank you. So today we're going to talk about open scholarship and Plan S, the first of a number of conversations I imagine that we're going to be having in this area. So I'm just going to I move on to the next slide, and Edie Davis, my colleague in Research Informatics, will follow up on this. So what is Plan S? Some of you may have heard of it in July 2018, because that's when it was launched, but it has actually changed quite a lot in both form and substance since then. It's an initiative for open access publishing that's supported by Coalition S, a group of research funders and research organizations. Plan S requires that from 2021 onward, that publications funded by these Coalition S members must be made open access immediately upon publication. There's a few different ways to doing this, and Edie will talk to you about this in a very practical way at the end of my session here. In a nutshell, researchers must make their publications open access either through publishing them in an open access journal, so they're born open access, or publishing an open access article in a subscription journal that's under what's known as a transformative agreement. And we'll talk about that a little later. And or make their manuscript available in an open access repository such as Tara. So that's Plan S. What does the S stand for? Everybody wants to know. Well, you can probably come up with your own interpretation of that. But what it was described from the beginning was that it stands for science, meaning knowledge in the European sense, or speed, or solution, and possibly shock. Some people have said that it has suggested sanctions. So let's take a look at that and see. It's certainly something that's different. First of all, why do the funders consider this to be necessary? Why this big change? There's the obvious things. One of the reasons that we know that we're all espouse open access as a good thing. It's a matter of principle. It's a moral issue. It's about the effective use of taxpayers' money, the costs of subscriptions, which have been characterized 2 years ago at €8 billion a year in journal subscriptions alone. Saving on overall costs, and crucially, the need for faster dissemination of knowledge for further research and innovation, which is speeding up hugely in order to address the grand global challenges. And we all know so much about that now, as we're in the middle of a grand global challenge. This guy, let me introduce you to Robert Jan Smits, the EC Special Envoy for Open Access in 2017 to 18. And Robert Jan is not a man to hang around. He said that the transition to open access is far too slow. The European Commission and various others said aimed for open access by default to all publicly funded publications by 2020. However, as Robert Jan points out here, he said we only went from 15% to 20% in 15 years. That's despite all of the encouragements and the rewards and the carrots and the sticks and everything else. We still have 80% to go. He says, do you really think by 2020 we're going to get there? Impossible, unless we take radical and robust measures, and that's where Plan S comes in. So, first of all, who's immediately affected by Plan S? There are researchers in receipt of research grants from Science Foundation Ireland, Wellcome Trust, the World Health Organization, Gates Foundation, all of the UK research funding councils. The European Commission is a supporter. It's not a member of Coalition S, but we expect in Horizon Europe to see Plan S with knobs on in the grant agreements that we're going to see next month. And a whole lot of other research funding councils, mostly in Europe, but one in Africa, one in the Middle East. So what's required, just to take us through that reasonably quickly? If you're in receipt of research funding from one of these Coalition S member organizations from last January, 1st of January 2020 onwards, you have to make your journal articles, and they also mention conference proceedings, available on open access immediately. No embargoes, no quibbles, no excuses. They say that there are multiple ways to make your work available on open access and to comply, and I put in a link here and at the end of this presentation, which will be shared afterwards. One thing that's worth noting, well, let's say two things. First of all, Plan S have told, or Coalition S, I should say, have told us that they will create a forthcoming policy on other types of research publications, such as books and book chapters and so on. That's going to be due later in 2021. And I'm sure we can't wait to see that one. Meanwhile, we are going to master this particular exercise that we need to focus on now. Coalition S funders have said that they're going to actively monitor publications to ensure that they are open access and that they're properly compliant with Plan S. So they've got various requirements around this in addition to plain open access. We're suggesting here in Trinity, in order to support our researchers, to avoid negative communications from funders, time-consuming retrospective, actions to address it, the situation, possible penalties. We're suggesting that researchers try to ensure that their funded articles are made available and Plan S compliant as soon as they're accepted for publication. And myself at ED and a whole lot of other people are here to help you to do that. So insofar as we can. One of the innovations or the changes that a lot of people are curious about in Plan S is the retention of copyright. Plan S actually brings in this very radical change. Robert Jan Smits said they were going to be radical and they were going to be robust, and so they are. What they're saying is that researchers should inform the publishers when they're submitting an article that they're, and here comes some jargon, apologies, the author's accepted manuscript, the AAM. AAM, the author's accepted manuscript after peer review, not the postprint, but after peer review is made, that they retain the copyright to that, and that they inform their publisher when they're submitting an article that they have already decided that they're going to apply a Creative Commons attribution license when they submit the article. In addition, the funders are asking the researchers to include an addendum to be attached to their journal submission, which gives the name of their funder and their grant number and text to indicate any author's accepted manuscript arising from the submission is already licensed, and you can see an example there. This work was funded by, let's say, Science Foundation Ireland, grant number 12345. For the purposes of open access, the author has applied a CC BY public copyright license to any author's accepted manuscript version arising from the submission. Boilerplate text that is expected, you fill in the blanks, right? You can check your own grant agreement as the Coalition S suggests in order to have a look at that, but that's the nub of it, that's the basics. Plan S, Coalition S even provide us with a nice infographic to give us a view of the publisher's workflow and to give us an idea at the time of the funder. The funder agreement says at the very least the author's accepted manuscript of all peer-reviewed publications. We're saying journal articles because that's what they're saying immediately, are published with a CC BY license. Then what's owned by the author is the author's accepted manuscript, which can be deposited immediately upon acceptance for publication in an open access repository like Tara with no embargo, immediately open access. The publisher then goes ahead with a license to publish and publishes the version of the record. Within Tara, of course, we always give the citation to the version of record. We're looking for citations to that, obviously, and we provide the link into the version of record. So we look after that. And I should mention that when you upload something to Tara, Edie and Monica, who are working there in the background, will always check the copyright policies there. So you're not going to go wrong because they're experts on the area. So I mentioned about transformative agreements, and Edie's going to give you some examples, some more information on that. This language is new to us. The transformative agreement, according to Coalition S, is a range of strategies to encourage subscription publishers to transition to open access, to flip, in other words, in using a term that's used a lot. Plan S funders are quite explicit that they will not support the hybrid model of publishing. What that means is, let's say journals like the Lancet, which up until recently, the libraries like Trinity College Library has been paying through the nose to provide subscriptions to, supported by Arlene and her team here and IRL. So, but when researchers wanted to pay for open access, that option was available to them. So for selective articles, they could pay a hefty sum, typically somewhere between 2,000 and maybe 5,000, and it's just gone up. It's gone up to maybe 8,000 for these article processing charges. So Plan S has said they're not going to support that anymore. So publishers who try and do that are accused of double dipping. It's considered to be unethical and wrong. They'll say they'll support these current journals if they promise within a reasonable time frame that they are going to move on a pathway to turning into an open access journal. And the funders are actually working to change the landscape of scholarly communication, to change journals from being subscription journals to being open access journals. And those funders are prepared to put a lot of money into this. They've already done it, started to do it. Meanwhile, in Ireland, open access agreements have been reached through IRL, the Irish Research Electronic Library, with publishers, and Edie will mention these in a little bit a while, so that you can still publish with these journals, so long as they have these transformative agreements. And some of them are providing us with quite a lot of help in this area, so they may be able to provide us with a solution, or one of the solutions. A journal checker tool is something that Edie is going to show you as well. I just want to mention it because it's one of the big things that Plan S has provided in order to help researchers. You can enter the various pieces of information and find out which route is going to suit you to providing this open access that you need to do. So that's one thing. There's another way to be sure you comply. And if you just don't have time for any of this, and I know a lot of you simply don't have the bandwidth to deal with it, we recommend whatever route you choose, add your publication details to Trinity's research support system, upload your author's accepted manuscript after peer review to Tara. If you publish in an open access journal, you can upload the PDF. As I mentioned, Edie will check the copyright on it, and she will do everything within her power, nodding here, but thank you, Edie. And Monica's there too, who will make sure that we can get that out as soon as we possibly can and try to avoid embargoes in any way. By doing that, you make your publication compliant with Plan S. So that's, Plan S has moved towards an acceptance of the repository route, traditionally known as the green route, to open access. But you'll also comply with Trinity's open access publications policy, which is a very lightweight and I suggest researcher-centric, researcher-friendly way of allowing you to do this while retaining your freedom to publish where you wish. So, and you can also, by doing this route, you will be able to have a record that you can use to report on compliance for internal and external purposes. So saving you time. This landscape is changing before our very eyes. There are no certainties about this anymore, except that we have to make our publications available on open access. Increasingly, there's no choice on this. An example of how things are changing, nothing to do with Plan S, but an option that could help you with Plan S, is the free open access publishing platforms that are appearing. We've seen HRB Open Research, an open publishing platform with open peer review. Now the European Commission has launched its Open Research Europe platform, rapid and transparent publishing, born open access, completely compliant with Plan S. And they're currently accepting submissions in all of these subject areas. Note the social sciences, arts and humanities, who often feel left out of these areas. It doesn't suit everything. It's not for everybody. You still are entitled to go and publish in your Oxford University Press journals or your Elsevier journals, but you have more options in these cases as well. So here it is in a nutcase. Trinity researchers are immediately affected, are funded by these funders. What's required? Immediate open access, publication in a Plan S compliant journal, or deposited in TARA. Authors have to retain copyright to the accepted manuscript. A copyright retention statement is required, and specific licenses are required as well, which we've built into TARA. So what's new is immediacy, standards for journals, repositories and licenses, and this author copyright retention. The librarian mentioned what are we doing to support you in this, and I'll briefly mention, I'm going to ask you to tell us what more can we do here. And I'm delighted that the Associate Dean of Research is here as well to help us to work on this together, because it is a challenge. First challenge, number one, ensuring that all affected researchers are informed and equipped for compliance as quickly as possible. Getting a clear and unambiguous message across to all researchers. This is not something that you think about after your project is over. It's something you think about at the proposal stage. And that's increasingly obvious, that you need to put it into your dissemination plan and plan with other partners for open access. And it is the responsibility of the PI and the project to be able to ensure this. In particular, we need to find out ways to support our early career researchers within this area, some of whom, of course, are untrammeled and not burdened by older ways of doing things and maybe ready to enter into this. We need to support them to do that. We also have to look at this area of supporting authors to retain copyright of the author's accepted manuscript. Is this realistic within the real functioning environment that we're all familiar with, to put in this required test? I'd love to hear what you think about this. There may be some issues, for example, within the ownership of the copyright that we may need to tease out with the university and possibly with the university sector at a national level. That's something that it's very likely that we are going to need to discuss. In the meantime, our response to date has been with the support of the librarian, with the Associate Dean of Research and the LIPC, the Research Committee. We've been working on providing training and support, including train the trainers, providing guides and resources, and Edie will show you some of those in a minute. We've engaged with our funders, including the Commission and the Science Foundation Ireland, and if it's considered to be of value, we could probably, beam some of them in to talk to us if that was considered to be useful. Communicating on these transformative agreements and the technical development, of course, which is necessary in the RSS and TARA. We've brought in a new choice of Creative Commons licenses in TARA. We're working with these publishers like ACM to facilitate a bit of a holy grail for a lot of us. That would be the automated ingest of full text, open access papers from the publishers who have made these agreements, from their systems directly into the RSS and TARA. That's what we're working towards. So, if it all seems very overwhelming, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. It's not just going to happen overnight, and that's the thing. So we do have to engage with this in the immediate term. And also the development of automated alerts in our RSS, which we're looking towards, where if you're funded by Science Foundation Ireland, a little prompt will be given, have you uploaded your accepted manuscript? Copyright guidance and support and briefings to appropriate college committees. And please, what more can we do to help is the question that we're going to ask you. We'll be in touch about other activities, roadshows that are planned with particular schools. And might I say that I mentioned about all affected researchers, and if I could just add that all researchers are affected by this, everybody in college. There can't be just one rule for one group and another for another one. So I'm going to leave you with this here. There's a bunch of resources at the end of this but I'm going to stop sharing now and hand you over to Edie Davis, the content manager for the Research Support System, and Tara. Over to you, Edie.
I'm just going to talk you through a really, really quick guide of all of the tools that are available to publish a Plan S compliant article. So some of the kind of practical sides of this that might be useful if you're looking to publish. So here is just, I hope you can see this whole thing on the screen. Here is just a kind of guide to how to publish an article and have it be Plan S compliant and also compliant with Trinity's open access policy. This might look a little bit confusing if you've never done this before, but I'm going to go through all of these steps in a little more detail and show you some of these tools as well. So a great thing to start with is that journal checker tool that Niamh mentioned a minute ago, and I'll show you how to use that. And that will direct you towards what open access route you should choose. So you have those three routes of publishing in an open access journal or under a journal that we have a transformative agreement with, and I'll show you where to find that information as well, and or self-archiving in a repository. So self-archiving in a repository is always a good option, regardless of whether you're publishing in an open access journal or not, because it's mandated by Trinity's open access policy. So that's kind of a something that you should consider under all of these possible routes. There's some more information there, but I think I'll show you where you can find this information. It's probably more useful to go through it from a more practical perspective. So I'm going to show you our new guide, which I hope you can see now, to Plan S, which is on the library website. This guide just goes through all of the kind of basic information that Niamh's just given you there about what Plan S is and what funders it applies to and all of that kind of information. The most useful thing in this is probably this Where Can I Publish section, which takes you through these three routes. And I'll just show you the journal checker tool to start off with. So say I'm funded by Science Foundation Ireland. I can put that in, and I'm from Trinity College, Dublin.
Edie, can I just say we can't see your screen where the journal checker is?
Oh, okay, sorry. Let me see if I can start a new share. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Brilliant, okay, thank you. And okay, so I put in my funder and my institution and say I want to publish in +1. I have an article written and I'm thinking that might be a good fit for me. The tool will tell me that's an open access journal, so that's fine. I can go ahead on the open access route. And it will also tell me that I have the right to self-archive using rights retention. So it'll tell you that for pretty much any journal. In the case where it's a journal that there's a transformative agreement in place, it'll also tell you that information. So I know that we have a transformative agreement with ACM. So if I find an ACM journal here, it will show me that it's a transformative journal and that there is a transformative agreement between ACM and Trinity College Dublin. So that'll give me the information I need to go back here and then see what to do with that. So if it tells me it's an open access journal, I just go ahead and publish as usual. If it tells me to self-archive in a repository, I can follow the information here, include that text to indicate that my author's accepted manuscript is under a CC BY license, and follow here for some information about Tara and how to upload to Tara. And then if it's in transformative agreement and I maybe want to check the terms of that agreement or if I'm eligible, I can go here to the IRL website where there's a list of all of these open access agreements. So there I can see ACM open, and I can go in and see all of the instructions for authors. So I know exactly what to do with that. It's also a great idea to come back to this open access agreements webpage and have a look at what's here, because there's often new agreements. And also, while the journal checker tool is an excellent resource, it is still in a beta version, so it's not fully published yet. So it's good to always double check whether there's a transformative agreement in place as well as checking the journal checker tool before you publish your article. So that's basically how this LibGuide works in terms of supporting you to publish a Plan S compliant article. There's also some further information here about the rights retention strategy if you want to learn a bit more about that, and some further resources here, which are really just links to some more information about those 3 avenues to publishing an article, and some direct information from Science Foundation Ireland. A lot of people will probably be interested in the SFI specific policy, which is there. And there's also a webinar available and a really useful open access FAQ as well. So I'll go back, if I can, to this slide. Move this over. And all of these further resources that were there are available here as well. And that's essentially all from me. I'd encourage everybody to check out the Plan S LibGuide there, as well as the guide to Tara. And we'll be updating the Plan S guide as well as new things come up, because this is still a developing area, and there's still negotiations ongoing with various publishers and their policies. So we'll be updating that. So I'd encourage everybody to keep an eye on that. Okay, that's all from me. I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has. Okay.
Thanks, Edie. That's great. I'm looking at a whole lot of really interesting questions. So Arlene, did you want to group those in any particular way, or we'll just dive in?
Yeah, Niamh, I mean, I think there's, as not unexpectedly, there's a group coming in under the copyright retention side of things, but maybe we should start by with one of the meaty ones, which is coming from Joseph Clark, and he's asking a question in his role as editor of the journal in Oxford University Press. Now, Lorraine has given a nice start to the answer to that, I think, but yeah, maybe we could tackle that one. So, I mean, Joseph is raising kind of points about the fact that, sort of OUP, maybe having discussions around those proposals, that, OUP are sort of not permitting kind of content short of paying the APCs, and then, TAR and embargoes of the OUP titles, and just in general, kind of the detrimental maybe impact that it might have, or a view that it's having a detrimental impact on arts and humanities kind of research impact.
Yep. Okay. I can come in, and anybody else can if they want to. First of all, Joseph, I think it's really important to say that when you say you ran the library's proposals by colleagues, and this isn't the library's proposals, right? So that it's not us. So we're very pro. We're going to put our hands up here. We're very pro open access, but very researcher friendly, research supportive. Plan S is coming in and saying that these funders are requiring this, and there's no ifs and buts about it. They're not allowing any excuses from anybody, and they're telling their funded researchers that they can only publish in certain places. So Oxford University Press, as far as I'm aware, I've heard that are the subject of negotiations for a transformative agreement, and I think that would be very worthwhile. Right, until that happens. So transformative agreement will be, they get paid a lot of money to change their business model, or at least to designate a time frame and a transitional period for them to do that, because that's what Plan S is setting out to do. So I'd be really interested, as you're an editor of Oxford University Press journals, to find out what's happening in there about that, because there's no doubt Oxford University Press uses an embargo, and requires an embargo of 36 months on an author's accepted manuscript, which is really, one would wonder about how supportive that particular publisher is of its researchers. The fact that Plan S requires the author accepted manuscript to retain copyright is one thing that Oxford University Press are going to need to address. So that's one way of doing it. The full APCs, we know, are not available to pay either researchers in arts and humanities or any other researchers in Ireland. When article processing charges came in, first of all, we were going through a bailout from the Irish International Monetary Fund. There was absolutely no question about Irish libraries being able to pay article processing charges to publishers on top of the subscriptions that we were already struggling to pay. So this is part of that whole issue that's going on. I'd be really interested in us having a dialogue with Oxford University Press to see, because we value them, we value the work that they do, and trying to see how we can work with them to support our researchers to find their way through what is a transitional period. In the meantime, what I'd suggest to our researchers is comply with Trinity's open access publications policy. Don't worry about the embargo. We will apply it. 36 months, so be it. At least the accepted version of the manuscript is there and there's a record of it, there's metadata, people can find it out there, it's discoverable. Don't let the best be the enemy of the good. So it might not be completely compliant, but maybe that's quite necessary right now. So, sorry, I have to be quick about this one. So, another one. Yeah.
Could I just add to that the answer, Niamh, as well? I would say the IRA Transformative Agreements that Edie and yourself have both referenced. Oxford University Press is already one of the kind of collections that's available under IRA, under the Irish Research Electronic Library. So I'd say kind of watch this space as well in terms of a transformative agreement around Oxford University Press titles emerging.
Such good news, Arlene. Thank you very much for that. I kind of picked up on that in the grapevine. So this is going to help, the libraries are coming in to try and find a way through this. So you will be able to publish in Oxford University Press journals, and you will be allowed to archive your author's accepted manuscript with possibly the version of record with no embargoes whatsoever. That's what we're looking for. What should we go for next?
I go for one of the more recent ones next, actually, because again it falls into the kind of copyright retention sort of area. So I mean, it's a good question, really. Why are Coalition S funders changing their grant conditions to mandate researchers to retain copyright?
Yeah, I mean, I referred to this in the Robert Jan Smith said that it's taking too long. They expect open access. They say this is an unconscionable waste of publicly funded money, which most researchers aren't aware of because they're not paying the funding themselves, right? The libraries are paying it. But overall, the funders can see that so many people, citizen scientists and others who need to get access to the resources, people working, colleagues in the Global South or in other areas, cannot access our funded publications, and they're not prepared to accept that any longer. They've had mandates in place. The first European Commission pilot on open access started in 2007. So this has been around for a long time. They've just lost patience and they know that if they don't come in, unfortunately, with a big stick, that people are just going to not prioritize this and they will get stuck. And so that's the reason. And all the other things, the impact, the moral imperative and all of that too. So that's the main reason. Can I jump in on a quick question? What is a CC BY license? Okay, so that's quick and easy. So it's a Creative Commons attribution license. So you don't, with using Creative Commons, and we provide training in a lot of this, there's a range of different licenses. So you don't hand over exclusive rights to your own property, your intellectual property, to another party, that you license them to do it, or you make your work licensed on the web through a range of licenses, starting with CC BY, which is the attribution only. So you want somebody they can reuse your work, they can access it, but you require attribution. All the way down through CC NC, which is non-commercial license. We apply that in Tara actually as a share-alike non-commercial license, all the way down to no derivatives. So the no derivative ones is particularly relevant in arts and humanities, for example. So you can make your work available, make sure that it's recognized as yours, get the credit, the citations, the attribution, but make sure that it's under the circumstances that you allow. That's the beauty of Creative Commons. But talk to us if you want to know more about that.
There's a good follow-up one there too, Niamh, if I could jump in and say, it's about whether the Plan S copyright addendum should only be in the cover letter or the journal when submitting.
It's the cover. It's a submission that the funders are saying. They give us very clear directions on that. But how that pans out in reality is something yet to be seen. And so we'd be very interested to work with researchers who are actually prepared to try this. Others who might not be prepared to try it and might find it difficult. We've heard from some people, and there's another question about how to support early career researchers. We have to be realistic about this. So we can't just, sort of hand this out and say to people, off you go, if it doesn't make any sense or it's not realistic. We can have a dialogue with funders and say, look, individuals might not find this easy to do. perhaps the institutions that support them to do this, or perhaps even an institution like Trinity, even if we look at our IP policy and our and make sure that this is actually works for us, maybe we don't have the clout to do that for our institutions. Perhaps this is something we should do on a sectoral basis within Ireland, as has happened in other countries, the Netherlands, the Luxembourg, Belgium, etc., where our researchers don't have to do that because the country says this is our law, this is our legislation. So we need to work together in this area to try and do it. But yeah, the answer to the question, what Plan S is saying, you put it in at the submission stage. Okay.
Anything else to add on the kind of early research career question and what can be done to help there? We do have a specific question from somebody who's a first-year PhD student. They're talking about the fact that their PhD thesis is self-funded. Can they apply for Plan S?
Yeah, I mean, see, Plan S is this is a really great question, because I've mentioned Plan S affects everybody, whether they're funded or not, because it's changing the landscape. And it means that if some people are going to be working in this area of copyright retention, then surely I suggest that the institution should support others to be able to do the same thing. So that it's not only Plan S researchers who are supported in this area. So you can still, there's no question of application for Plan S, but you can do everything to be compliant with Plan S by following the procedures that Edie has pointed out. And you will get the benefits from that, even if you're not funded. The benefits from open access, as we're always saying, is not just about the people coming in with a big stick. It's about more impact. You're going to get between 50 and 250% likelihood of more citations to your work if you make it available on open access. Plus, there's the whole societal, economic, and cultural impact, where people in government, policymakers, civic society, NGOs, enterprise, and others can access your work. So you get more attention, and that's been proved. So if you follow Plan S, you don't have to sign up for anything. If you're not funded, you're free to do that. It's a very good idea to do it, to apply these processes, publish where you want to, deposit your work in Tara, and reap the benefits is what I would say to you.
So the questions that are coming in are really rich. Oh, something from Lorraine? Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to add, I think actually all of the conversations that we're having around Plan S, around open scholarship through the past 18 months or so here in college, it also, I think, shines a light on the fact that, particularly for early career researchers, particularly for PhD students, that we need to be thinking dynamically about where we want to be in the publication world. I think perhaps in the past it was easy to say, well, where have people always published, and that's where I'm going to go. Whereas now it's actually an opportunity in this very changing, dynamic environment to sit back and plan ahead, and to use the tools such as those that Edie and Niamh have introduced, and to think about where we're going to be in 5-10 years. Because, just very recently I was at a LERU meeting and somebody said with great enthusiasm, Plan S isn't something that's happening in the future. Open scholarship isn't something that's happening in the future. Yeah. It's now. So we've got a lot of stuff to do, and it is certainly a little challenging when we're trying to figure out where we fit in and how we should respond. But it is the new normal, to use an overused expression of our time.
That's right. It's very important, Lorraine, and we have to kind of reinforce that. Some people might have, some leeway here who are not funded by these funders. The ones who are funded by these funders really have to do that. And I'm sorry, I'm going to repeat this because when you've worked with a research group who have let it go and they haven't applied this, and I'm talking about ERC projects within the university and European Commission funded projects. When the project comes to an end, some of the researchers are gone, the author's accepted manuscripts are on a USB stick somewhere. We can't remember where we left it, right? You can't find those again. That causes a massive amount of stress and angst. We help in every way we can. There's one occasion when everybody had to stay up all night to try and get those publications in because the funding was frozen, right? So we don't want to go through that. There are reputational issues at stake as well here as well. And not only that, this is not that hard to do when you're in under a Plan S funded researcher. You can apply some of these, all these principles that we show you there are complications on all of the edges of this, which we do need to address as well. So, but please don't get caught out if you're falling under that immediate group. So Lorraine is absolutely right. Could I add to the early career researchers? There's something that comes up all the time when we do workshops with early career researchers, and people come to me privately and they say, you know, Niamh, this is all very well, it's grand, we'd love to do this, we really want to do it, but we're being told by senior people, by our supervisors, by others, that we have to, you know, walk that traditional route. This is something I think that, you know, I suggest that we need to find ways, maybe you can suggest some, that we can address as an institution, or maybe school by school, or research group by research group, to try and see that there isn't that, the dynamics are changing. It's not the tablets of wisdom being passed down as much anymore. Undoubtedly, there are still some of those tablets that are there. But these days, some of the early career researchers actually have a better handle on what's actually required in this area. So we need to have the communication going both ways. Also, our ways of recognizing research, recruiting and promoting people is absolutely critical. And I can see that, you know, we're on the cusp of signing, hopefully, going along with the DORA principles. I hope, and the Associate Dean of Research will be able to help us with that. This is critical as well. People say, are we going to get the recognition for, you know, publishing, let's say in the European Open Research Platform? Will that be recognised within the university? So those are questions that we can't answer here today, but we can certainly raise and try and see if we can bring them forward.
Another question then from one of our early career researchers and our early career principal investigator, more specifically about the research being supported by SFI, but no portion of the funding being dedicated to open access publication. And how to kind of access kind of the budget to pay for that. So again, if I give you a break, Niamh, if I can again say that IRL again as a route for negotiating more transformative agreements, and a lot of our journals coming to us via that route. So again, keeping an eye on the LibGuide page that Edie Davis showed, and on the IRL page, and of course the library will promote those new open access transformative agreements as they become available. But Niamh, I don't know if you have anything to kind of add to that.
No, I think we pretty much covered it, Arlene. I think that that the funders are prepared to support this. Those funders that we have available now. If we're talking about the IRC and the HRB, they are not there. They support the National Open Research Forum, and we will see changes taking place in Ireland in this area. That might include the provision of funds, as has happened in the UK and elsewhere, to pay for additional costs. Certainly the HRB have been paying our article processing charges, and SFI have been doing this up until now. Usually it's left up to the, as you said, it's been left up to the PI, to the project, to decide how they're going to spend that funding, but they're allowed to do that if it's necessary. Just to bear in mind, though, article processing charges are not allowed under the Plan S. This is one of the biggest things that's there, that you can have a transformative agreement. You could have I'm going to qualify that. Article processing charges in hybrid journals. So let's say you're publishing with the American Chemical Society, nano letters, right? They've put a 12-month embargo on it, not Plan S compliant. You have to pay $3,000 to as an article processing charge in order to make that article open access. If you're a member of AC, American Chemical Society, ACS, you get $1,000 dollars knocked off. But if we've got a subscription, which we do, you get another 1,000. So you only need 1,000 for each one of your articles to do that. Plan S will not support that because they're a hybrid journal. They have to change, and they're not changing yet. So we are in a period where there is this transition, and I notice Joseph Clark is really coming in there strongly into these cracks, where it's not working. Those are things that Plan S are saying that they're going to try and address as soon as they can. But meanwhile, what I'm suggesting is that we do our best and do no more. We don't pay article processing charges. We do put our authors accepted manuscript in TARA. If there's embargo, we put an embargo on it for the time being, right, until things move on, until they change. That's the way we say it. But as I say, we don't have a pot of money that's sitting there for us, unlike other institutions, to pay APC. So, and that is something that needs to be addressed. The Public Library of Science, for example, is going to charge us $2,500 and researchers are finding that information within their grant funding or within, sometimes, unfortunately, within funds, within schools and research groups. So it is an important issue.
So we are running out of time, but there are a couple of questions that have popped up as well that I'm tempted to put to the panel. Can I carry on for another couple of minutes? So maybe maximum of 2 more. Would we be comfortable with that? Just in general, there are 2 questions kind of around the topic of, if I am a co-author and the lead author is from another institution from outside of Ireland, sort of what's going on there, or if I'm a co-author, not the lead author, and the corresponding lead author doesn't comply to Plan S rules, what happens then?
So what's going to happen is that just taking the last one first, if the project is funded under a Plan S, Coalition S funder, the funder will monitor the publications and the funder will come to the PI in the first instance to look for those open access publications. If you as a co-author hold on to that author's accepted manuscript, and ideally from your own point of view, deposit it entire, just do it for your own purposes, for your own benefit, then you'll be providing a service to yourself, but also to your project. So regardless, because as I said, the funders will come in and they will look for that. They'll be compliant. They will be looking for compliance. The first part of that, I think, was it about whose responsibility it is? If it's an international article.
Sorry, yes, yeah. So if you're the co-author and the submitting author does not comply to the Plan S rules.
So this thing to bear in mind, Plan S is international, so that we're not the only ones who are thinking about this. Not in Ireland, where every institution in Europe is having the same conversation as we are at the moment. So your co-authors will know about this. They'll find out some information, and if they don't, we're going to ask for people to flag it at the beginning of a project where they're getting involved in the project, just to remind people that we are funded by Plan S. We're going to have to build that into our publication plan and retain our author's accepted manuscript at a minimum. Sorry, Lorraine, you had your...
No, you've actually said some of the things that I would say. I said, I think that we need to be a lot more proactive and have from the beginnings of projects and from collaborations, be they funded or not funded, that we're thinking through where are we going to publish and who's doing what. Because apart from anything else, it actually resolves a lot of potential conflicts down the line around contributions. But equally, it means that from the get-go, you're thinking about, well, what is going to be an acceptable place for this publication to go, and is this compliant or not?
Yeah. For Plan S funders in particular, I think that's going to be critical, is at the proposal stage. Many of them, as we've seen, Wellcome Trust are looking for all those details anyway from the get-go. So, which is a good thing, no surprises, unhappy shocks coming into the equation afterwards.
Okay, so we've run out of time. There's a couple of more practical questions that have popped up. I would imagine the best advice is for people to maybe contact Edie and Niamh through the LibGuides page, and indeed their subject librarian colleagues as well. I'll hand back over to Helen.
So thank you. That was a tour de force, I have to say. And if you're following then everything to do with open scholarship and this whole debate around Coalition S, the 80 or 85 people are on this call. You might be interested that in last week there was an open letter from all the publishers, or 50 publishers, in the Times Higher, largely about rights retention, but it's interesting to follow that. Also, Liru published an interview with Paul Eris, who's, let me get this right, Vice Provost for Open Scholarship at University College London, and that is about coronavirus strengthening open science. So it's quite an interesting article. Just on the overall, we had a task force, an ad hoc task force on open scholarship, which has formulated its report and its recommendations, which are with the current Vice Provost and Provost. But just to update you that the Associate Dean of Research, Lorraine Leeson, and I are meeting with all the current provostial candidates specifically on open scholarship. And I would urge everyone, particularly the early career researchers, if you look in the 3 manifestos, there's a lot about the early career researchers, go to your schools or wherever the hustings and ask about this. Raise it now. I would really, really, really recommend those issues around early career researchers, and particularly in the context of this, is to raise that. So it's time to wrap up. This is one of many events that we're planning. And on your behalf, I'd really like to thank Niamh and Edie for their deep knowledge and expertise, Arlene for her moderation, and also her deep expertise and all the work on behalf of IRL. We all benefit from this consortium of journals, and the transformational deals, watch out for those. They're hugely impactful. And I'd obviously like to thank the Associate Dean, and especially can I give a big shout out to Niamh Brennan, who is that behind that the Pomodoro on your screen, who has orchestrated this and works in digital systems. So a huge thank you to Mark. So thank you all very much indeed. And I will reinforce what one of our credits, one of the people in the chat say. Thank you for this very useful session. Thank you. Have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.